A girl was declared dead when she was only 6 years old. Her name was carved on a stone. Everyone believed she was gone forever. But 5 years later, high above the clouds, 2 F-22 pilots froze in the sky when they heard one call sign on the radio. That call sign was Ghost Rider. Before you watch full story, comment below, from which country are you watching? Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Lily sat in seat 21C on a big passenger plane. She was small for her age, with brown hair tied in a plain ponytail. Her clothes were simple, bought from small shops by her guardian, a retired pilot named Grandpa Sam. Her backpack sat under the seat in front of her. Inside it were only a few things: some old clothes, a photo of a woman in a flight uniform, and a small silver box. The man next to her was busy with his phone. The woman across the row smiled at her kindly and asked if she was traveling alone. Lily said yes, she was going to see family. It was not fully true, but she had learned to say simple answers. For 5 years, she had learned to stay quiet and not stand out. She had been taught to blend in, to look like any other child. A flight attendant walked by and checked on her, the way crew members always do for children flying alone. Lily said she was fine. Nobody on the plane knew what she was carrying inside her mind. Nobody knew that this quiet girl had spent 5 years learning things that most grown adults never learn. The plane, a large passenger jet, pushed back from the gate in the afternoon. The sky was clear and calm. As the plane moved toward the runway, Lily closed her eyes and did what Grandpa Sam had taught her. She went through the plane's systems in her head, one by one. She knew the speeds, the controls, the steps for takeoff and landing. She had learned these facts the way other children learn songs. The plane lifted into the air. Lily felt the same push against her seat that she always felt. Her mother used to love this moment. Captain Grace Hart used to say that the second the wheels leave the ground, you finally feel free. Lily opened her eyes as the city disappeared below the clouds. Somewhere far below was the place where her mother's plane had gone down. A place where, on paper, Lily herself had died too. She touched the small silver box in her bag. It held the ashes of Grandpa Sam, who had passed away 2 weeks earlier. He had asked for his ashes to be placed at a memorial for pilots in the capital city. He had served in the Air Force for many years, but his last 5 years were spent doing something different. He had raised a girl who the world thought was dead, and he had taught her everything her mother once knew. One evening, 2 years ago, Lily had asked him why he kept her hidden. They were in his old workshop, where he had built a small flight simulator using spare parts. He told her that her mother's crash was not really an accident. Someone had caused it on purpose. Her mother had been one of the best pilots the country had, and there were people who feared her skills. If they knew her daughter had survived, Lily would be in danger too. So Grandpa Sam made a hard choice. He let the world believe she had died, and he became her secret guardian. She then asked him why he taught her to fly if she had to stay hidden. He said her mother had wanted to share her love of flying with her. He said the best way to honor someone is not to hide from who they were, but to carry forward what they loved. Her mother's call sign had been Ghost Rider, and he believed that name should not disappear just because bad people wanted it gone. Now Grandpa Sam was gone too, and for the first time in 5 years, Lily was traveling under her real name. His final papers had required it. A lawyer had helped fix years of hidden records. It turned out Lily had never truly been declared dead in a full legal sense, only presumed lost. Coming back into the world was surprisingly simple on paper, but it felt frightening in real life. The plane reached its cruising height. The seatbelt light turned off. People read books, watched movies, and talked quietly. It was an ordinary flight, safe and calm, the way flying usually is. Lily took out her mother's photo. It was soft and worn at the edges. In the photo, her mother stood proudly in her flight uniform in front of a fighter jet, smiling with quiet confidence. The kind woman across the row noticed the photo and asked about it. Lily said it was her mother, who used to be a pilot, and that she had passed away. The woman said she was sorry to hear that. Lily simply said it was okay, because that is what people expect to hear. About 40 minutes into the flight, something strange happened in the cockpit. The captain began to feel dizzy. He blinked and shook his head, thinking it would pass. But the feeling grew stronger. His vision blurred, his thoughts slowed down. He tried to tell his co-pilot, but before he could finish his sentence, he leaned forward, unconscious. His co-pilot noticed right away and felt the same strange weakness rushing through her own body. She tried to reach for the radio, but her hands would not work properly. Within moments, she too lost consciousness. A hidden problem in the plane's air system had slowly filled the cockpit with a dangerous, invisible gas, and both pilots had been breathing it in for many minutes without knowing. For almost a minute, nothing seemed different in the main cabin. People kept reading, sleeping, and talking. Then the lead flight attendant noticed a warning light on his panel, a signal that only pilots can trigger if they need urgent help. He moved quickly to the cockpit door, entered his code, and opened it. Both pilots were unconscious. For a moment, he could not believe what he was seeing.
He called the other flight attendants using the intercom and told them there was a serious emergency and that both pilots were down.
The crew moved fast. One brought oxygen and a medical kit. Another began checking the passengers for anyone with flying experience. A third prepared to make the announcement no flight attendant ever wants to make. The captain still had a pulse and was breathing, but he did not wake up, and neither did the co-pilot. The plane continued flying straight and steady only because the autopilot was holding it there. But autopilot cannot handle changing weather, other planes nearby, or landing. It could only keep them flying until there was no fuel left. The announcement went out over the speakers. The senior flight attendant asked if there was anyone on the plane with any flying experience at all, and asked them to come forward immediately. The cabin went silent for a moment. Then fear spread quickly. People began crying, praying, and calling loved ones. The crew searched through the plane but found no one qualified. A man who once repaired planes but never flew them. A teenager who only played flight games. A woman who took a few flying lessons many years ago and never finished. None of them could safely fly a large passenger jet. In seat 21C, Lily sat frozen for a moment, her mind racing through 5 years of lessons. She knew the plane's systems. She had studied the manuals. She had practiced in the simulator hundreds of hours, but she had never flown a real plane, and she was only 11 years old. Coming forward meant revealing a secret she had hidden her whole life. But if she stayed silent, everyone on the plane could die. She thought of her mother, who had made a brave choice in seconds to save her long ago. She thought of Grandpa Sam's words, that if she was ever in a situation where lives depended on what he taught her, she should not be afraid, no matter how young she was. She unbuckled her seatbelt and walked toward the front of the plane. The senior flight attendant tried to stop her gently, telling her to sit down. Lily said quietly that she knew how to fly the plane. The flight attendant stared at her in disbelief. Lily explained that her mother had been a fighter pilot with the call sign Ghost Rider, and that she had trained for 5 years with a retired pilot who had raised her in secret. Something in her calm voice made the crew member pause instead of dismissing her right away. With no other choice and no time left, the crew brought her into the cockpit. They carefully moved the unconscious co-pilot out of the seat, and Lily climbed in. Her feet barely reached the pedals, even with the seat pushed forward, but her hands knew where everything was. She checked the instruments just as she had been trained. She reached for the radio and pressed the button. She said this was an emergency, that both pilots were unconscious, and that she was taking control of the aircraft. The controllers on the ground asked who was flying and what training they had. Lily took a breath and answered with the only words that felt true. She said, "This is Ghost Rider." The radio went silent for several seconds. Then a shocked voice asked her to repeat her call sign. She explained everything, that she was 11 years old, that her mother had been Ghost Rider, that she had been trained in secret for 5 years, and that she needed help landing the plane. Far away, 2 F-22 fighter jets flying nearby heard the call sign over their radios and could not believe what they were hearing. It had belonged to a pilot who had died years earlier.
The F-22 jets changed course immediately to fly alongside the passenger plane and guide her home. One of the fighter pilots had actually flown with Lily's mother years before and slowly realized who this brave voice belonged to.
He stayed on the radio the entire time, walking her calmly through every step, from checking her instruments, to lowering the landing gear, to lining up with the runway. His voice was steady, though filled with quiet emotion, because he was speaking to the daughter of an old friend he thought he had lost forever.
As the plane came down toward the runway, emergency vehicles lined the sides, ready in case something went wrong.
Lily kept her hands steady on the controls, remembering everything Grandpa Sam had shown her in that little workshop. The wheels touched the ground with a hard bump, but the plane slowed safely and finally came to a stop. Everyone on board was safe. The unconscious pilots were rushed to the hospital and later made a full recovery. Outside, people could not stop talking about what had happened, that a young girl who was once thought to be dead had just saved every single person on the plane. In the days that followed, the truth came out. The world learned about Grandpa Sam's quiet sacrifice, the years of secret training, and the reason behind it all. Lily was welcomed by the fighter pilot who had guided her down that day, and by others who had once flown beside her mother. She was given a chance to grow, to learn properly, and to slowly build her own path in the sky. Lily Hart, once declared dead at 6 years old, had returned not as a memory, but as someone very much alive, carrying forward a legacy that refused to be forgotten. And though she was still just a child learning to fly, everyone who had been on that plane knew one simple truth. Some names are never really gone. They are only waiting for the right moment to fly again.